Hey everybody, and welcome to Story Time. So this week I am going to read books about sort of happiness and figuring out happiness and finding happiness and how we can be happy. And today I'm going to read a book called A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. And it is a little bit long, so settle in. It's kind of a cute book, but it also talks about something that you might face, which is feeling pressure to be like other people. And a lot of times that does not make us happy. So, and it's something we all have felt. You know, you might feel it now, and I know at different points in my life I have felt that way. So sometimes adjusting to what other people think you should do or not do or not like can make you very unhappy. And so once we get to the point where we can just be ourselves, it is easier to feel happy. So this is A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. You might have seen other books by David Shannon. He has illustrated and written a lot of books. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror and then screamed. Have you ever looked through your closet like that? Oh no. Her mother ran into the room and screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." That was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Sorry, my allergies are bad. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. I wonder what you would do if you had stripes all over your body. I wonder what your mom would do, or your grown-up that you live with. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he explained. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, running nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. I wonder what would happen if he went to school covered in stripes. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and the Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class began the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. I wonder what would happen if a kid in your class did that. I wonder what you would do. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard," and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction. And I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes might be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father turned to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetie?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. I wonder what would happen if she just ate the lima beans. Yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over." An hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. When the specialists went to work on Camilla, they squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, concluded Dr. Grop, or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not chickenpox, put in Dr. Cricket. Or sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialists. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed, said Dr. Grop. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Wonder what's going to happen. Wonder if you can predict. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did not feel different, but when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Oh no! Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialists, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. It might be a virus, he announced. With authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Dr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab, Dr. Gord explained. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. I wonder if you're understanding what's happening. Do you hear like they're saying something and that's what happens to Camilla? So she's just adjusting to what people say. Now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. Poor Camilla. Can you see her? I wonder what that would feel like. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, and old medicine men, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. Oh my, that sounds awful. One day, a woman called herself an environmental therapist claimed that she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. I wonder what your grown-ups would do if this happened to you. I know if it happened to my kids, I'd be really scared. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and as sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. I wonder what you think she's going to do. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What have we here is a bad case of the stripes, one of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh, no, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plateful of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Mmm, said Camilla. I wonder if you remember how this all started. That Camilla loved lima beans, but she was afraid to admit it because she thought people would laugh at her. Suddenly, the branch's feathers and squiggly tail began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. Well, it stopped. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. So it just took her admitting kind of who she is to be back to herself. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never even had a touch of stripes again. The end. I wonder what you think about that book. I wonder if you have anything about yourself that you wonder if people knew, you wonder if they would like you as much as you want them to. So I wonder if you can relate to this book at all in any way. I wonder if there's a food you really like that you think other people don't really like or might laugh at you for liking, or if there's something that you like to do, or I don't know, maybe you just are really good friends with someone that you think other people might not want you to be friends with. There are lots of ways that we adjust ourselves to try to fit into what we think other people want, but that's always really hard, isn't it? It's hard to pretend to be someone that we're not. It never really works out the way we hope it would. So I hope you got something out of that book, and I hope you can start to realize that one of the paths to happiness is that we can truly be ourselves, that we can really be our authentic selves. And hopefully the people who judge us for that, that's kind of their problem. They really have to get over that because they're probably also judging themselves that same way. So I hope you're well, and I hope that I'll get to see you soon. Bye.